What's up, guys? D-Rock1992 here. For this next video and for my next movie review, I am going to be talking about a movie that I just watched yesterday. It is a Melissa McCarthy comedy, and the comedy is Tammy. Tammy, for those of you who don't know, came out just last year. One of Melissa McCarthy's only starring role appearances last year in Hollywood for 2014. And Melissa McCarthy, of course, is known for comedies like Identity Thief, The Heat, and Spy. All comedies which I enjoyed. I really did like all of those. Along with Melissa McCarthy, in this one, you have Susan Sarandon, who is probably best known for, at least in my opinion, for Thelma and Louise, the mid-1990s adventure/thriller type film. You have Allison Janney, who's probably best known for her TV appearances on The West Wing and currently on the TV show Mom, which is on CBS. She also was in the movie Spy with Melissa McCarthy. So this is Spy was their second collaboration together. You have Gary Cole, who is probably best known, in my opinion, for his bit role in Dodgeball, a true underdog story, which is one of my favorite comedies, FYI. Also, Dan Aykroyd has a small appearance in the film. Dan Aykroyd probably best known for Saturday Night Live and The Blues Brothers. And then you have Kathy Bates, who is probably best known, in my opinion, for the movie Titanic. So, you have all these players in this movie, and here we go. Let's get into the plot of the film. So Tammy Banks, played by Melissa McCarthy, is a down-on-her-luck redneck hick, basically, is how best I can describe her. She's an out-of-her-luck redneck hick who has a bad day. She runs over a deer in her car, and the car has significant damage afterwards. She has to abandon it pretty soon after. She gets fired from her job, and she catches her husband cheating on, well, she catches her husband having a romantic meal with the neighbor. So in her mind, it was the husband was cheating on the neighbor, was cheating on her with the neighbor. So, needless to say, again, Tammy's having a bad day. She wants to leave the town of Murfreesboro, Illinois. And she wants to leave by herself. But her grandmother, Pearl, played by Susan Sarandon, wants to come along with her. So eventually those two join forces and they leave together. They go on a big trip together, and needless to say, they run in a lot of hijinks. They run through a lot of hijinks, including the grandmother Pearl having sex with a stranger played by Gary Cole, and you know, all kinds of other hijinks as well. So essentially, that is the plot of the film. Tammy's trying to find herself, and it's not, let's be honest, it's not the greatest plot ever. It really isn't. So, seeing that the plot isn't exactly a great plot, not really, is the comedy funny? No. No, it's not. So, now I mentioned before that I liked Identity Thief, The Heat, and Spy. Those three movies are very funny. they really show Melissa McCarthy as a funny force. She's drunk in this film. That's my theory. I think she's drunk in this film. I think she had no idea that she wrote this screenplay, along with her husband. I think they had a wild, crazy night, and basically they wrote this movie. So, as you can probably tell, I really did not like this comedy at all. Okay, I'll say it, I hated this comedy. I was really looking forward to it as a movie because, you know, I had just seen Spy with Melissa McCarthy, and I really liked Spy, and I liked her performance in Spy. She, you know, it was the best performance of her career, I think. And I watched The Heat, and I also liked that film. And Identity Thief, which I watched a long time ago, but I do remember she was funny in the film. This film just was not the same thing. I really think that I may go off on tangents here in this video, but I mean, the plot really, I mean, you look at it, you look at the story and all that kind of stuff, it could have been a lot better. It could have been a really good idea. I mean, it's a good idea. I mean, it's a different story, you know, and it's a pretty good idea for a comedy. But that idea just never totally comes to fruition, and it's disappointing. As a comedy, the laughs are few and far between. I had a few chuckles, you know. I had a few chuckles, a few little laughs, but not that big laugh that left me in stitches. You know, I just didn't have that. So, now I'll say this. What in the hell was Susan Sarandon doing in this film? What the hell was that? I really did not see the point of having Susan Sarandon in this film. Besides the fact that these two, I mean, Susan Sarandon and Melissa McCarthy, they had the chemistry in some ways, but not the comedic chemistry. So they had regular chemistry like you see in movies. I mean, they were okay, but they just didn't have that comedic chemistry that Sandra Bullock and Melissa McCarthy had in The Heat, or Melissa McCarthy and Jason Bateman had in Identity Thief. I mean, that chemistry just wasn't there. This movie also tried to be Thelma and Louise too, and it failed miserably. You can draw a lot of comparisons to Thelma and Louise in this film. I mean, Thelma and Louise, for those of you who don't know, is about these two women who basically ride on go cross-country trying to escape their troubles. Sarandon and Gina Davis is the other woman in Thelma and Louise. And they go and try to escape their troubles, and they get into hijinks. This is basically the plot of Tammy. Tammy's trying to be Thelma and Louise too, and like I said, it fails miserably. It almost tries to be a spoof in some ways of Thelma and Louise. It fails miserably because it's not funny. It's just not that funny of a comedy. It's not engaging. I really don't see the point of any of these characters. Gary Cole. Gary Cole was funny in Dodgeball, a true underdog story. Granted, he had a bit part in that movie, but he was fun. I mean, he was funny. He was on point. In this movie, he wasn't funny. There was no point whatsoever of having him in this film. There's a role, Tammy's husband is played by a comedian named Nat Faxon, who I've seen before, and I think he's a comedian of some sorts. He wasn't funny. Wasn't funny at all. What was the point of having him in that film? The big one was Susan Sarandon for me. What the hell was she doing in this film? She didn't need to be in it. It was... no. She wasn't funny. She's just an alcoholic grandmother. So, whatever she had in the alcohol that she drank throughout the film was probably real alcohol. Because she just drank her way through this film, basically. I think Melissa McCarthy had a little bit of that during the film because she acted like she was drunk in most of the film and all that. You know, the only real... Melissa McCarthy, there were some laughs, some chuckles in the film, so Melissa McCarthy wasn't, like, not... I mean, she had some moments, but yeah, they were few and far between. I'll even give Dan Aykroyd the benefit of the doubt. Dan Aykroyd, in a small appearance, was okay. You know, just not defining in his bit role. Allison Janney, I mean, you could have seen her be funnier, but she wasn't funny at all. It's like, in this movie, the characters, they didn't need to be there. Melissa McCarthy, I mean, she could stay in this film, but, you know, it's not a question of does she belong in this movie. It's just a question of, it's just a thing of, you know, the movie just wasn't funny. The script just wasn't funny. It just didn't give a lot of opportunity for funny, laugh-out-loud moments for Melissa McCarthy. So this was basically a subpar Melissa McCarthy show along with other people that did not need to be in this film. So, what baffles me, and I mean, what kind of baffles me, my mom actually saw this film in theaters. I didn't get to see it in theaters. My mom did. She's a big Melissa McCarthy fan. And she liked the film. She liked the film a lot. Which, I mean, obviously film is subjective, so if she liked the film, great for her. I found it very hard, very difficult to like this film. And, well, actually, I didn't like the film at all. You know, it was just an unfunny comedy. I'll give you a comparison. This movie, at least, was a little better than Mordecai. Mordecai, which I have reviewed on this channel, Mordecai was a terrible piece of crap movie that just... that movie was awful. Tammy was a little better. Tammy was a little better, but not much. For the movie in general, I am going to give this a 1 out of 5 stars. There were some moments in the film, like when Tammy holds up a convenience store. That was okay. That was kind of funny. I mean, it wasn't laugh out loud funny, but it was, you know, a few chuckles, a few little laughs, you know, things like that. But that was pretty much the highlight of the movie. There were a few other chuckles sprinkled in, but they were very few and far between. This could have been a great comedy film. With the plot, with the idea behind the film, this could have been a great comedy. But it just didn't, they just didn't execute. The execution of this movie was poor. Very poor. And, Melissa McCarthy, a lot of times, just looks out of place. in the film. Everybody else in the film didn't need to be in the film. So, this is just a bad comedy. And as a result of that, a poor comedy. Quite simply, this comedy really did not make me laugh all that much. It was just a poor excuse of a comedy. And like I said, I give it a 1 out of 5 stars. Later on, I will be doing an about video. Even though the movie sucked, I'm still going to do an about video on Melissa McCarthy in general and Susan Sarandon. So look for those videos coming up. That is it for this video on Tammy. D-Rock 1992 out.